Hey guys, I just wanted to make this video as a little bit of a reaction video to the results of UFC 225. Talk about why some things happened, some future matchups we can make. Overall, I did pretty good on the night. Went 7 for 10 in the video and overall 10 for 13 on picks for the night. So I just wanted to talk about any kind of future matchups with the winners and losers of the card. Hope you watched it. It was a pretty good card, not the most amazing card ever. Um, Bit of overhype on some of the fights, but nonetheless, pretty good card. Couple good results. Couple questionable decisions, but we'll talk about those as well. So my first pick of the night was for Charles Oliveira versus Clay Guida. Overall, I got that pick wrong. I had predicted that Charles Oliveira would win by decision. I thought that the fight was too short notice for Oliveira, and he'd end up making some mistakes. But he actually won by first round submission. I tended to underestimate his ground submission game a little bit. I thought Clay Guida's submission the defense was still there, but obviously it's not anymore. He's Oliveira is tied, I think, now for most submission wins in the UFC with Royce Gracie, which is one of the founding members, actually possibly the founding member of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in UFC as we see it today. But some good and possible future matchups to make is for Clay Guida. I think it would be cool to see him fight the loser of Gilbert Burns versus Dan Hooker, which is happening at the Super Fight card. Which I know it's on July 7th in Vegas. I think it's 226. Yeah, I think it's UFC 226. And for Oliveira, I'd like to see him fight the winner of Olivier Aubin-Mercier and Alex Hernandez, which is two fighters who both got first round finishes. I think I'd like to see the trend going. See the winner of that match fight Oliveira. So the second fight I made a prediction for was Benavidez versus Pettis, and ultimately I was incorrect. I thought that Benavidez would win by a submission in the second round. Instead, Sergio Pettis won by split decision. Um, this was a fight with a little bit of a weird scoring, but we'll talk about that in a second. Um, Benavidez kept the fight standing. I thought he was going to try and take it to the ground. He saw that Pettis was a little bit helpless against Cejudo on the ground, so I thought that's where he would try to take the fight. Ultimately, he couldn't land the takedowns. He tried in all three rounds, got a lucky one in the first round after he got dropped, but he wasn't really setting them up. Just kind of threw them out there, see if they would land. Pretty bad shots. But Pettis showed that he improved a lot since the last fight. He is able to go back, review the footage, see what he did wrong, and improve on that. And I love seeing that in a fighter. I love seeing fighters being able to improve on their losses and change their skill sets. Um, the scoring in this fight, somehow they gave one of the judges gave all three rounds to Pettis, which I thought was weird. I thought Benavidez at least won one round, but it was weird scoring throughout the whole night. The judges were honestly scaring me throughout the night. Um, anyway, Benavidez, I think he should fight Alex Pantoja. Alex Pantoja is recently coming off a win over Brandon Moreno, a dominant win, as a matter of fact. It would be good for Benavidez to get a fight with one of the lower ranked guys in order to just kind of get his footing again before he starts to surge through the rankings or try to make another run at the title. Um, but for Pettis, I'd like to see him go for the title. Honestly, it just got confirmed that Demetrius Johnson is fighting Henry Cejudo in on UFC 227 for the flyweight championship. I'd like to see him fight the winner of that, which I believe will be Demetrius Johnson. But I'll do like a prediction for that when the card is a little bit closer. Um, has he done enough to get a shot at the title? I think so. I mean, besides that last loss, he's looked pretty good. Good win over Benavidez, who's the number one contender. So I think those would be the good matchups after this fight. The next fight I predicted was Rashad Evans versus Anthony Smith, and I had predicted that Smith would win a decision. Instead, he knocked Rashad out cold in the first round. Um, I'm just gonna get right to the point here. I think Rashad Evans should retire. This is the fifth fight in a row he's lost. He's very old, out of his prime. I don't want to see a former champion just get knocked out like this on the Fight Pass prelims. I mean, it's just sad. Like, there's 40-year-olds who take one wrong step in the shower and die, let alone a knee from a 205-pound behemoth. Um, I think Rashad Evans should call it quits. Maybe one more fight, like Vitor, announce that this is his last fight. Go out there, maybe fight Lyoto Machida. Actually, as a matter of fact, if he's gonna do one more fight, let's see him go at Lyoto Machida. But if not, I think he should retire. I don't think he should do this much longer. Um, for Anthony Smith, he called out Sam Alvey after the fight, and Sam Alvey had called out Corey Anderson after his last fight. Corey Anderson replied to him on Twitter. Listen, listen, I'm going through some family stuff right now. I'm probably not gonna fight for a little bit, nothing too long, but he's just wasn't interested in answering his call out. So I do think that Anthony Smith versus Sam Alvey would be a good fight. It'd be interesting to see. Two former middleweights who moved up to light heavyweight. So I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. That'd be a good fight. So the next fight I broke down was Ricardo Lamas versus Mirsad Bektic. I had predicted that the fight would go to Bektic by either a second round knockout or a decision. Ultimately, the fight did go to a decision. However, I might have seen a little too much in this fight. I thought it would be a stand-up battle. Unfortunately, it was a bit lackluster. I'm not even gonna lie, spaced out during the second and third rounds. There wasn't much happening at all. Future matchups for this fight, we could see. I think I'd like to see Lamas fight Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar's coming off a loss to Renato Moicano. Calvin Kattar looked phenomenal in his first fight against Shane Burgos. That was such a great fight, a very, very, very underrated fight. Both coming off losses, decision losses. Wouldn't mind seeing them fight. Would be definitely entertaining to watch. For Mirsad Bektic, I'd like to see him fight. I'd like to see him jump up in the rankings. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Frankie Edgar. We'll see if Frankie Edgar can kill another prospect like he did to Yair Rodriguez. But I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. I think that'd be a really, really good fight to see, as a matter of fact. So yeah, that's what I think for Lamas and Bektic. So the next fight I broke down was Alistair Overeem versus Curtis Blaydes. I had got this one exactly right to a T. I predicted that Blaydes would hurt Alistair on the feet, go in for the takedown, and finish the fight by ground and pound. And that's exactly what happened in the third round. Blaydes did struggle with getting some takedowns, though. He didn't struggle with getting the takedowns. He struggled with progressing after he got the takedowns. Alistair went for a lot of heel hooks, tried to get a submission off of him. But for the next matchups, I wouldn't mind seeing Overeem fight the loser of Mark Hunt versus Alex Oleinik. Hunt's coming off a loss to Blaydes. Oleinik's coming off another Ezekiel choke win versus, I think it was Junior Albini. I'm not sure. But whoever loses that fight, I think would be a good matchup for Overeem. Mark Hunt would be a fun rematch to see. They're both a little bit older than when they first met. For Blaydes, I think we should do a prospect versus prospect match here. Blaydes should definitely fight Alexander Volkov, and then the winner of that should 100% fight the winner of Stipe versus Cormier. That is, if Cormier wins and keeps the belt at heavyweight. He said that he would instantly vacate it if he won at heavyweight. But if the winner is Stipe or whoever the champion is after that fight, I think should fight the winner of Blaydes and Volkov. So the next fight I predicted was CM Punk versus Mike Jackson. I said wherever the fight took place is who would win. It mostly took place on the feet. CM Punk did show amazing heart, among the top guys in the UFC, let alone in this division. He refused to give up, even when he was out of energy, couldn't get any takedowns, couldn't land punches. He still gave it his all and tried to win. But yeah, simply put, neither of these guys will ever fight in the UFC again, so there's no point of doing a future matchups for them. So the next fight I predicted was Andrei Arlovski versus Tai Tuivasa. I thought Tai Tuivasa would win by a first round knockout, like he has all his other pro MMA fights, but instead this was the first time we saw him go the distance. he showed that he does have the stamina to go 3 rounds, and he does have the chin to take some hard shots. Um, Andre Arlovski was unloading on his chin with some pretty clean shots, and he was eating them and returning shots back. Um, for future matchups, I wouldn't mind seeing Arlovski fight the a loser of Junior Dos Santos versus Ivanov, which I believe is happening in the Moscow card in September. It's it's getting close to the end for Arlovski, and he is another one who has got a couple more fights in him. Um, I think that would be a fun matchup, especially if it was Dos Santos. Pretty good stand-up exchanges could happen there. For Tuivasa, there's only one fight to make here. It's whoever loses the Ngannou and Lewis fight. Whoever loses that fight, it should 100% get Tuivasa as their next opponent. I mean, all three of those men, Tai Tuivasa, Francis Ngannou, and Derek Lewis, all have insane power, and even for heavyweights, all three of them are knockout artists. Ngannou broke the record for the strongest punch thrown by a human. I mean, yeah, whoever loses that fight has to fight Tuivasa. That would be amazing to see. So the next fight I broke down was Holly Holm versus Megan Anderson. I thought Megan Anderson would win by a decision. I thought that her length and reach would be too much for Holm. I was wrong, actually. Holm managed to win by a decision, even though Megan Anderson did crack her pretty good in the first round. Um, Holm showed that she's willing to change up the game plan to win fights. I mean, she took a very different approach than she typically does with her UFC fights. She went for more of a wrestling approach, and that showed to pay off. Megan Anderson did not have much ground experience or ground game. She did look out of place here, as if she was fighting someone who was pretty high above her skill level. Um, I think the next fight for Holm should be to move back down to 135, fight Katlyn Vieira at one, and if she wins, then maybe fight Nunes. I don't think she should go right into a fight with Nunes. I think that she should fight Vieira first. Um, and I wouldn't mind seeing Megan Anderson fight Jermaine Durandamine. I know Jermaine was saying she wanted another fight in the UFC, and I think it'd be a pretty good matchup between her and Anderson. So now we get to the co-main event, and my pick for this fight was I had Colby Covington winning by a third round TKO. However, it went the distance. Colby had won by a 5 round unanimous decision. Um, I had predicted that RDA would gas himself out. I thought he would frustrate himself. Covington would be on his back foot a lot and run around and make RDA gas himself out. However, it was a little bit the opposite, but with the same results. I mean, he put constant pressure, made RDA back up the whole time. RDA shows he hasn't really learned about lateral movement. I mean, he showed that same problem in the Khabib fight. Khabib showed constant pressure and just was able to ragdoll RDA. This time RDA did mount some offense in the fourth round with his own takedowns, but that was just Covington's fight. I mean, listen, personally, I don't like the guy. I'm not a big fan of his personality, how he trash talks his way into the interim title fight, but I do appreciate his fighting style and how he's able to almost back up what he says. But I think the next fight for RDA should be against Stephen Thompson. Stephen Thompson is another fighter who's at the top of the rankings, coming off a decision loss. It would be a very entertaining fight to see. I mean, Stephen Thompson is a great karate fighter. RDA is a great stand-up artist. I mean, it'd be amazing to see these two go at it. For Covington, I think the only fight for him is to fight Woodley to unify the belts whenever Woodley is healthy and ready to compete again. If Woodley tries to duck Covington, which I don't think he will. I think the trash talk has already started for this fight. They're going back and forth on Twitter. Um, I do think that I don't think that Covington should fight Darren Till. I don't think Woodley should fight Darren Till. I think these two need to fight and unify the belt, and then Darren Till should fight either Robbie Lawler or Kamaru Usman, and if he wins or whoever wins either of those matchups should fight for the unified uh, welterweight strap. I mean, Till versus, I know these fighters weren't on the card, but just a little side comment. Till versus Lawler would be an amazing fight, and Till versus Usman would be another prospect versus prospect fight. Or I don't know if you can call them prospects. I guess they'd be title contenders at this point. But that's the only fights to make at this for this matchup. So now we get to the main event, the rematch between Robert Whitaker and Yoel Romero. I want to talk about the controversy surrounding this fight before I talk about the future matchups. A lot of people do think this was a robbery. They don't think Whitaker should have got the decision. They believe it either should have been a draw or it should have gone to Romero. Personally, I do agree with them. I believe it should have been a draw. I don't think there were two 10-8 rounds. I think the only 10-8 was the fifth round, and but Whitaker did win the first three. So I can see how it could have been a draw, but I also can see how Romero could have won. But I really don't see how Whitaker could have won. I mean, those last two rounds had to have been at least the 10-9 for Romero, and the fifth had to have been a 10-8, and Whitaker mounted no defense offense whatsoever. He was just getting he was fighting on just pure heart alone. Anyway, getting to the future matchups. For Whitaker, I think the only opponent he could have next is Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum has looked phenomenal in his last two fights against Jacare Souza and Michael Bisping. The Michael Bisping knockout was hard for me to watch. I mean, I'm a huge Bisping fan, but I'm an even bigger Kelvin Gastelum fan. And he was able to just counterbox Michael Bisping's counterboxing with more counterboxing. Like, it was just one of the watching it in real time, I was just shocked because of the knockout, but then going back and watching it again, I was even more shocked to just see the technique he used. For Romero, I don't know if I want to see him at middleweight still. I think I'd rather see him make his debut at light heavyweight. Maybe fight someone who's also new at light heavyweight, like Sam Alvey or Anthony Smith, and move up from there. But I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch at light heavyweight between him and Luke Rockhold after Luke Rockhold is returns to the sport and is healthy again after surgery. I also wouldn't mind seeing him fight whoever wins the fight between Volkan Ozdemir and Shogun Hua. I think any of those three opponents, Rockhold, Volkan, or Hua, would be a great fight for Romero at 205. I don't know if Dana White's gonna let him fight at middleweight. As a matter of fact, I mean, he missed weight for two titles fights at middleweight. That just shows, like, if you're missing weight for the title fights twice, that, I mean, not that you're not taking it seriously, but you just can't do it. I mean, who wants to miss weight for those fights and not be able to win the championship? Even if you have an advantage in the fight, I mean, why would you want to win that and then just risk having another middle championship fight? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But yeah, you would definitely. I think he definitely needs to move up to light heavyweight. So that's gonna be it, guys. I just wanted to talk about some of the results of UFC 225, talk about my picks, and talk about some future matchups that we could see. My next video will probably be the breakdown for the Leon Edwards versus Cowboy Cerrone card. That's gonna be I think it's a Fight Pass exclusive. But yeah, any suggestions, any things I can improve on in the future, just let me know. Any videos you guys want to see, just let me know. And that's it. Yeah. See ya.